Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of Sunday Unpacked. We are discussing November 23rd's sermon, which was on giving thanks.
Yeah,
Correct?
and here we are recording 2 days before Thanksgiving, so
Yes,
it's the right time of the
it
year.
is very exciting. So, James, how are you doing? Everybody good at your home? Everything's good?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I mean, a lot to be thankful for.
Yes, so much to be thankful for. I was outside or I wasn't even outside. I was getting ready today and I saw movement in the mirror that was showing a window to outside, and I went and there were 6 deer in our backyard.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that was cool. It was a really, one of those small things that makes me remember the big blessings in life.
Yeah, that's a
Just
nice
looking
thing.
out there. Yeah. I think, you taught on in Deuteronomy, which goes back to the Israelites being
Yep.
in the wilderness and with Moses and everything. And I feel like they had such a reliance on God for deliverance from slavery and their future as a nation. And then, those 40 years in the wilderness. I think that's...
You got to depend on God then, right?
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever had a time in your life when you felt that dependent or reliant on God?
Yeah, I mean, I've had multiple times, and, a lot of them are really personal, honestly.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there are things I can share too much, but just the sense that in those moments I've known, like, there's only one way to get through even the next few hours, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not even to think beyond this day, but just where I am in this moment. And my guess is we all have some of those times sooner or later. But yeah, I mean, when we are in those places where we know, it's been made clear that we are not in control. We know we're
Yes.
never really in control, but sometimes things
Yeah.
happen that remind us that we're not in control and that we have to just depend on God for the next, the next breath, the next few moments, the next thing that's coming. And that's not easy. It's not something you really want to go through, but it is part of life.
Well, and our culture, our Western culture, is all about independence,
Absolutely.
self-reliance.
Yep.
We're the land of opportunity where you can make anything of yourself. Well,
Right.
How can we, with our culture, even begin to understand what it was like for them day in and day out, and to follow the in the wilderness, how God led them? Was it a fire by day, a fire at night, and a cloud
Pillar
by
of
day?
cloud by day, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was total
Well,
reliance on God, and I don't know that we have that, or that we have even, I mean, what are your
so
thoughts
often
on
we
that?
have everything we need, right? I mean,
You do.
not maybe everything we want,
Right, for
but we
sure.
have, most of us who are listening today, maybe not everybody, but most of us, are not worried about whether we're going to have enough food to feed our families tonight. We're not worried about, this weekend it's supposed to get cold, maybe snowy. We're not really overly worried about whether we're going to be able to find shelter in the midst of
Right.
that, or clothes that are warm enough to, keep us alive in the midst of that. Probably not even going to be outside that much. But the point is, we live in a place and a time where most of our physical needs are met. And so I think it goes back to where we began. I mean, then we have those moments where we're reminded, oh, you know what? That illusion that I'm in control and that everything is the way I want it to be,
Yeah.
those are hard, because then we sort of
Yeah.
have to live like most of the world, or most of the people who've come before us, and we recognize we're not in control. And so that self-reliance is good because it can prompt us and help us to accomplish things. But on the other hand, it is an illusion, because we can't do everything on our own. That's not the
Yeah.
way life really works.
What do you think we can learn from their situation in Deuteronomy 8, and especially from God's words through Moses in verses 7 and 9. It says, "For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, and you will lack nothing."
And that's sort of that point, that they were moving from sort of subsistence living, they're relying on God literally for the food for tomorrow, to a place where they would farm and they would have herds, and so they would provide for themselves in a way. But Moses is reminding them before they get there, yeah, you will work and you'll be responsible for these things, but just know you're still really reliant on God.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really up to you. God is giving you this, and so you should give thanks for it.
What do you think about verses 10 and 11 in Deuteronomy 8? It says, "When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God." What do you think he's trying to tell us?
That it is easy when we have what we need to forget God.
Yeah.
And they would do that. And, we may talk about it a little bit more as we go along, but I mean, that's going to lead them to, oh, what about these other gods? And maybe we need to try to keep all the gods happy, so we'll have everything that we want. And they would forget, and partly because you would have later generations, what it was like to live in the wilderness and what it was like to have God provide manna today for today's food and then tomorrow for tomorrow's food. And so it would be a very different life, and so they would be tempted to forget just how dependent they were on God, just like happens to us.
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about entitlement, and I wonder if this could maybe speak to us about entitlement. And
It does.
And kind of Moses warning them, don't think that this is all, you're God's chosen, but, this is not something you deserve. It's because
it's easy
of
to
his
fall
great
into that
love.
sense of
It
entitlement.
is so easy. Yeah.
Because we get so accustomed to what we have, and we just feel like that's what we deserve because we're so used to it. And again, when we compare how a lot of the world lives, even though we want to keep living the way we do, and I do too. I mean, I like not having to worry about where the food's going to come from tomorrow.
Right.
I don't want to be in a situation where I'm afraid there won't be food for my family, or somebody's got to go without food. Who's it going to be? But there are people in our world who deal with that every single day. And so a sense of entitlement says, I'm owed that.
Right.
And we really need to watch that. And that's what got the people of Israel in trouble.
Yeah. Deuteronomy 8:18. "Remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant." Is that relevant for us today?
I think the call to remember the God who provides for us is just as clear today as it was then. I don't think that's changed even a little bit, and I don't think it ever does. Because, again, it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
But I love that phrase, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. I mean, we have the parable in the New Testament of the man who builds barns and builds bigger barns, and it's all about his wealth and what he can accumulate. In the end, we're reminded that that all leads to nothing. But the point here is the only reason we can accumulate anything is because God gives us the ability to do that work. And we may work hard for what we have. I mean, there's many of us have. We worked our whole lives, and we only have what is in our homes and in our bank accounts and in our garages because we have put in the effort. But this is a reminder that the reason we put in the effort is because God gave us the ability to do it.
Yeah,
and so
he
even
gave us
then,
the health that
That's
we
right.
enjoy so that we can go to work.
Right.
Why is it important to attribute our successes and our blessings to God rather than to our own strength.
Well, I think there's several reasons. First of all, maybe most important is it's true, and that's what this passage reminds us. It's the reality is it's not about me, it's about God, and these things are a blessing from God. And second, it builds our relationship with God. When we recognize our dependence on God, then we're more likely to focus on who He is and what He's done. And then I think we see ourselves more accurately. We see who we are. We get a better picture of who we are, and it can keep us from pride and even arrogance, right? When we recognize that, okay, I have worked hard, but God's given me the ability to do that, and God has blessed the work that I've done so that I have what I have. So I think all those things are just a reminder of keeping the right understanding of who I am, but who I am in relation to the God who created me and sustains life and provides the work that I do and all those things.
That's good. In what ways did the Israelites practice thankfulness for God's blessings?
We see in this passage that they praise God, so it's worship. And I mean, it seems to be worship in some ways, like we think of worship. They gathered together and sang songs of praise. And I mentioned the Psalms as in the message on Sunday. But the one thing that they did that we don't do in the same way, at least, is they offered sacrifices. I mean, that was prescribed by the law. It said these are the sacrifices you're to bring and when you're to bring them and how you're to prepare them and all those things. So that was a part of their thanksgiving, saying, okay, this first part is God's. It'd be easy to hold back the first part, right? Because you don't know if there's more, but I'm going to give that to God. That was an act of worship. And then their obedience. This passage is really clear about that part of the way that they acknowledged God's role in all this was that they obeyed what God asked them to do. And there's, 5 books of the Bible that tell them all that.
Did a lack of thankfulness in recognizing God as the one who gave them the blessings lead to their times and acts of rebellion?
Well, at least in part. I don't know if I attribute it all to that, but I mean, it does play a part in that they forget that this is the God who brought them out of slavery. This is the God who gave them the land. This is the God who allows them to accumulate wealth. This is the God who protects them from their enemies. And then they begin, that is how they move into worshiping other gods. Well, let's make sure we worship the God of the harvest, and let's make sure we worship the God of the moon or the sun or rain or things like that control those things, or fertility in terms of having a family. And so they're forgetting that there's this one true God, and they want a little more. So let me make sure, maybe we don't just ignore God.
Yeah.
But that's exactly right. The fear of missing out. Yeah.
How can we foster a heart of obedience in our world that often celebrates rebellion?
Well, I mean, it's hard, right? Because we make our own rules. And we don't really like to think about any overarching morality, if you will. And yet, I mean, the Bible's filled with that. And so we have to remind ourselves, just like the ancient Israelites, not to forget who God is. And if we acknowledge who God is, then we're called to obey that same God. In part because He's blessed us in such amazing ways as an act of thanksgiving, but in part just because He's God.
Yeah.
And because He's God, He can show us the best plan for our lives.
Do you think a heart of thankfulness and praise will protect us from entitlement and rebellion?
I think it helps.
Yeah.
I think there's probably more work to do there, but I think that's a big part of it. I mean, that sense of acknowledging God's place keeps us from elevating us beyond God or close to God or somehow being out of balance. So, I think it does help us in that. I mean, there's lots of things we probably need to be doing in that, but certainly thankfulness is a guardrail for us in that.
So we look at praise and thankfulness as like maybe songs that we sing at church,
Sure.
And our Thanksgiving services, our big meals, Thanksgiving prior to receiving the laws and commands that the Israelites needed to obey, Passover was established, and then it became a feast of remembrance or
Sure.
thankfulness.
Sure.
When were the feasts and the celebrations of provision instituted, and how many were there? Because I know there's like a feast of harvest, and
There
we
is.
talked about this after Passover, and then the day of Pentecost. Those were like
Right.
the feast of the first fruits or the first
That's right.
harvest or something like
Yep.
that. And
Yeah.
that was one of the ways they gave thanks and praise to God, correct?
So yeah, and we see, at the time of the Exodus, when they're leaving Egypt, the law's not written yet. So the
Right.
Passover comes into being before it could be commanded, and so it's sort of in that same process. So Moses is in some ways instituting the Passover meal as they experience the actual Passover.
Passover.
So that's in Exodus. But as we go through the rest of the law, we see other feasts introduced. And there are three primary ones. And then there are others that are less important or develop over time, not
Okay.
just during Bible times, but between the Old Testament and the New Testament. We see
Okay.
some of that
Yeah.
in other books. But in the law, the three major ones are Passover, which celebrates the Exodus, Israel being brought out of slavery, becoming a people. You have the Feast of Weeks, which celebrates the giving of the law itself. And then you have the Feast of Booths, which tents, that's what that's about, which comes in the fall. And that celebrates the harvest and God's great provision, and is a reminder, hey, we used to live in tents in the wilderness,
Okay.
and we just had barely enough to survive. Now, look, we live in this land that's providing for us, and we've just had this harvest, and we need to give thanks to God for it. And that sounds sort of familiar to us because it sounds a little bit like Thanksgiving, doesn't it? But it
Yeah,
was
it
called
does.
the Feast of Booths to remind them that they lived in tents before.
Okay. Well, there was something that you had said in your sermon, and it was concerning verses 11 through 14, which we kind of hinted at a little bit.
Yeah.
But you said that those verses were basically saying, remember who you are. You belong to God.
Yeah, and I think I was even thinking bigger than that. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
purposes of the whole law is for God to say, okay, what does it mean to be set apart as my people? What does it mean to be a holy people? Well, let me show you. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not, disobey your parents, all those things. And those are just the beginning. But that's what the law is all about. Okay, this is what it looks like. This is what sets you apart from every other people on the face of the earth. So, and here we see some of that. This is certainly a piece of that. But it is all about marking a people. And I think we see that carried over into the New Testament as well. We're reminded, okay, Paul will say, okay, this is what it means to live as a follower of Jesus, a disciple of Jesus. Here, let me tell you, you stay away from these things and you pursue these other things. I finished Ephesians today because I might be a day behind in our reading guide. So it should have been yesterday. So there may be some people who have done the same thing. And Paul has one of those lists that are very common. And he lists some things that sound really bad, sexual immorality and all this. And then he'll go into, gossip or telling, filthy language or filthy humor. And, well, we get excited about some of those, but then there are others that's sort of like, well, that's not really that bad, is it? I mean, and yet it's right there in black and white. And we're called to live that way. So I think we have that same call to be different from the world around us.
Yeah. So they were kind of some of the festivals were to look back and remember
They were.
where they'd been.
Right.
I do that a lot, look back at where I've been, but then I get stuck in the negative of where I've been, and
well,
I
yeah.
miss God sometimes unless I look for him. But when I do, I just almost can't believe where he's brought me from and the different things he's brought me through.
Yeah.
And I think that the festivals and that and the law and praise would help them focus on him rather than
Well, and I think there are, you know, I think we still need that in some ways, and we do celebrate that in ways, right? When we're in Thanksgiving week, so that's a pretty good example of that. And then we'll go into Christmas time, and that will bring us to other things that we really do need to remember, like the birth of
yeah.
Christ. I do think that some of our listeners and watchers may have grown up in churches that celebrated the sort of more the liturgical year, right? And that talks about Advent more clearly, and then Christmas and Epiphany, and then you move in toward the things that are preparing for Easter, and then the Easter season after that. And our churches tend not to do that as much because it's not commanded in Scripture. Like, we're not told you have to celebrate Easter even. It's just not there. But there may be something healthy in that. And even if we don't necessarily do it as a church, I think there's some value in doing it even personally, and there's resources out there to help us with that. But those just yearly reminders of walking through the story of Jesus' life from his birth, or even the stories before his birth, right? We could talk about the stories of Mary and Joseph and Zechariah and Elizabeth and all that,
Right.
all the
Yeah.
way through to death, resurrection, ascension, and then the beginning of the church. I think there's probably something healthy in that because it takes us back every year to, okay, these are the key events in God's salvation history, and they are worth being reminded of because each one of them is a blessing in a slightly different way. So, again, I'm not saying that's something we have to do or, whatever. I think it is one thing that some other Christians probably get right that we sometimes miss because we don't do that.
Well, there's a place for it in
Yeah,
our
right,
lives.
exactly.
Yeah.
It is not commanded. It is not something that we should
Right.
feel like obligated that God said, thou shalt do this. But, there are practices out there that even if they're not commanded can still be helpful
Right.
to our growth. And
like your sermon point was, thankfulness allows us to respond to God's
Yeah.
blessings. So we have to acknowledge God's blessings and the gift of salvation, the gift of life with him, the gift
Right.
of a hope and a future and in order to have something to be thankful for, I guess.
Agreed.
Acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it as a blessing. Acknowledge it and thank him for it. You reminded us that God wants our thanks and our praise,
Yeah.
and that our thankfulness is enough for God. And I think we sometimes forget to praise and thank him for our daily blessings.
Yeah.
I was talking about, I'm not saying that every time I look out my back window and see that, but I do. I mean, it's just, our house is new to us, and I look back there, especially the fall, which is my favorite season, and I can't help but be in awe of God's creation and just am so thankful.
Well, and I think that's just those little moments are positive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a beautiful sunset. We were in the car the other night, and the
Oh,
sunset was
yeah.
just really, it's just a drive home.
Yeah.
But we got to just sort of watch the sunset the whole way we drove over this hour, and it was
Yeah.
really beautiful. I mean, there are lots of Sundays, and it depends on the season of the year, that when I get to church, the sun is just coming
just
up on
rising.
Sunday
Oh.
morning.
This is a beautiful place to see a sunset.
Well, it is because it's
Beautiful.
wide
Yeah.
open. And I'm just reminded, okay, the Lord has made this day, and we're here for worship, and that's a blessing. And I know that doesn't happen every Sunday, and it doesn't happen every sunset, but But when it does, I think we should celebrate it, and it should remind us of God's
Yeah.
blessing, and I think that's a good thing.
It puts perspective on the greatness of God that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
visible every day if we look for it. Even
Right.
whatever's going on in our lives, the sun
Correct.
is going to rise and the sun is going to set because we
Yes.
have a God that made them that way. And I think that's you took us to Luke 17. You showed us 10 men who received healing from Jesus, and yet 9 out of the 10 failed to go back and give thanks.
They did.
And
They
the one who
did.
did give thanks was the Samaritan.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. Luke introduces that story by telling us that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem and he was traveling along the border between Samaria and Galilee. Now, what's interesting about that is the route from Galilee to Jerusalem is a north-south route. The border between Samaria and Galilee runs east and west. So why is Jesus traveling either east or west when he's trying to get south? Well, I don't really know, but you got to wonder if he knew this encounter was coming and he
yeah,
was going to be in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes the point that you've got these guys who are living on this border between Galilee and Samaria, which contain two different people who are not fond of one
right,
another, and they have come together because they got nobody else.
right.
I mean, they're cast out from both the Jews and the Samaritans, and they've decided, survival together is more important than all the things that could separate them. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of dynamics just in just a few words here and there in this story.
So, I'm going to try and understand, are the Samaritans Jewish but not?
Yes, yeah. I mean, they seem to be mixed with. They come back from the exile and they've mixed with various groups. So to those who were, felt that they were more pure, these people are less pure. Plus, they see the Old Testament slightly differently. They worship in a different place, but they do still acknowledge the same God, and they do still have the same scriptures, but they are seen as, insufficiently obedient and insufficiently pure.
So did they go to temple and have priests?
That's one
Did
of the
they
big
not?
problems is
Yeah.
that they don't worship in Jerusalem. They worship on Mount Gerizim.
Which
And
is
there's a
a
shrine,
David thing, right?
Yeah,
Was
I mean,
it-
it goes all the way back. I mean, it goes
Yeah.
way back. But it's in their territory, whereas Jerusalem is in Judea, where the Jews live. So this is a separate place. But part of the problem is, and it even comes up in John 4 when Jesus has interchange with the Samaritan woman, that we worship on the mountain, you worship in Jerusalem. Now, there would have been a place of worship there, but it's not the same thing as the temple in Jerusalem. But they still had priests, and they still offered sacrifices.
That was my question, my
Yeah.
big. So, okay. So when they called out, Jesus, have mercy on us, did they mean, what did they mean healing? Is that what they wanted? Or did they maybe just want
I
provision?
think that's what they meant. No, I think they know who
They
Jesus
knew who
is,
he was, yeah.
and they knew the kinds of things he's done, and they're hoping he'll do something for them.
Right. So part of, I think you mentioned this in the sermon, I don't know if you did, but part of being able to go into society is being declared healed
Yeah,
by
right.
the priest,
Clean. Yeah.
being declared clean. Did the Samaritan not worry about the priest declaring him clean because he knew
I-
he was healed by Jesus? Or
I think
mean-
they're just as cast out as the Jews who have leprosy,
Yeah.
and he wants to do that, and I imagine he did. But what's more important to him is, oh yeah, this guy just
yeah,
ended all this for me.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. And I need to thank him for it.
So I assume he would have been going to a temple or someplace in
A Samaritan
Samaria,
priest. He's looking for a
but
Samaritan priest. That's what
right,
I would
and the
assume too. I
others
don't.
would be going to a Jewish priest.
Right.
That's yeah.
Right.
How does this encounter enhance our understanding of the importance of thankfulness?
Well, I mean, Jesus says this: "Were not all the 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" And I think Jesus says that for effect, right?
Right.
Then he said to him, "Rise and go, your faith has made you well." Now, they all had gone to the priest still unclean, so in some ways they all had faith and obedience in Jesus, but this man seems to get that you respond to that too
Yeah.
in thankfulness. So Jesus praises him. But, I mean, the verse before that is, he threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And then Luke tells us, and he was a Samaritan. So it's not just that he went over and stuck out his hand and said, "Hey, thanks for doing that." I mean, he is on his knees thanking
Yeah.
Jesus, because this is life-changing for him.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and wasn't it? It was Jesus talking to the Pharisees, I think, or the Jewish leaders, that the one who has been forgiven the most is going to be the one that is thankful
Yeah,
the
right.
most.
Right.
And so, I mean, the fact that he's a Samaritan and would have been looked at as a, wasn't it? They were looked at as less than dogs or something.
Well, yeah, and
Or
I mean, there's
yeah,
all kinds of things that we could wonder about what's going through
yeah,
this guy's head. Like, my guess is, I don't know
yeah,
this, okay, this is just me reading into the
yeah,
story, so I'm not saying I got this from the text, but I just wonder if these Jews have heard from their families this teacher, this wonder worker is nearby, and they all call out to Jesus, but did the Samaritan wonder if Jesus, this Jewish rabbi, is going to heal all of them? Or is he just going to heal the Jews?
yeah,
But then he walks along, or they run along, to go find the priest, and...
he realizes he's healed.
Right. So he may have been thinking, these guys will get this, but I may not. I mean, again, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's just a beautiful text.
it is, really.
Yeah. What are some of the blessings that you're most thankful for in this past year that you just acknowledge that it was God?
Well, I mean, our family, I'm just thankful
Yeah.
for the blessing of health, and that whether it's our parents or our daughters or whatever,
Yeah.
we're all together. We had, like, our oldest daughter came in. We had Thanksgiving early because it was when she could be off from work. Well, when your kids move away, one of the things you're really thankful for is when you get a few minutes with them, and that was a huge, huge blessing for us. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it probably begins for me. But then I'm thankful for the year we've had in ministry as a church and a school, and the way God has used us. Honestly, and you're part of it, but our whole staff right now, I'm really thankful for. Our church staff is really strong, and we work well together, and that's a big deal. And so I'm really, that's a blessing to me. I'm thankful
Yeah.
for it every day, really. So as far as I'm concerned, I've been blessed overabundantly,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I feel very fortunate to be a part of everything here, and
Well, I do too. I'm thankful that I
it's
get to be part of it.
it's really, really wonderful opportunity, and I'm learning so much and learning how much I don't know, and
Well, that's always part of it.
but yeah,
Yeah.
this is one of my big blessings is
Yeah.
working here. And then, we waited for a house for 7 years. We
Yeah.
looked at houses and we finally got one. So we're just so feeling so blessed.
Yeah, that is a big blessing.
So much to be thankful for. Are there any wilderness moments from the past year that you had to remember to give thanks in the moment rather than whine and complain like an Israelite? And that would be me.
Oh,
I'm a big
yeah. I mean, yeah, same
weepy.
here. I mean,
Yeah.
I get complainy real easy because I
Yeah.
tend to notice the negative if I'm not really careful. So, there's been some work that I do outside the church in terms of mission that's been challenging this year, and been a little sad the way some of it's developed, and that's been a real challenge for me because
Yeah.
I like to see everybody get along and work together, and it
Yeah.
just wasn't going that way, and that's very frustrating to me. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely had those kind of moments, and I don't know that, do we ever have a year when we don't have something that
No.
puts us in that,
In my 57 years, the parts that I can remember, no. I've never had a
yeah,
year that there
me neither.
wasn't something that was challenging.
That's just the way life works.
It is, and I'm just so glad. And I have to say, we've made some changes this year in the church well, just in the last month or so with Neil taking over
Yeah,
worship. And,
right.
it's always been, worship has always been a wonderful thing to me. I've always loved it. I just have to say, it's been good.
Yeah.
And I asked you earlier in the day here, what is one of your very favorite worship songs that's been a blessing to you?
I mean, of course, it that moves throughout life, right? I mean, we come across new songs that
They
speak to us
change,
in different
yeah,
times in life, partly because we change, partly because there's
yeah,
new music or we just
yeah.
encounter something different. For the last several years, and a number of years, it's been the goodness of God. I remember when I first actually remember watching the video to that song before I heard it. Now, I could have heard it on the radio or something, I don't know.
Yeah,
But I remember being struck by it when I saw the video. And just that line, all my life you've been faithful, that really speaks to me, and that this really is about praising God for his deep goodness, the very
yeah,
goodness of God, because that is a characteristic of God. That song has always been powerful for me, and I think because there are those times when life is not easy,
yeah,
but we can still say, all my life you have been faithful,
yeah,
because God was present even when we're struggling with stuff. Just because
yes,
there's hard things that are happening doesn't mean God is somehow now unfaithful to
right,
me. But to make the proclamation in song that God is faithful, I think it's been a good thing for me to say out loud in that song, and then to proclaim the goodness of
yeah.
God. So that's one for me, for sure.
I think reading the Psalms, sometimes I would get caught up on the ones that would say that we're going to proclaim his goodness in the
Mm,
sanctuary or among the people.
yeah.
And when I struggled most with doubt and grief and hurt, and thought that God wasn't there, when I would get a moment of clarity and just know
Hmm.
that he's been right by my side, that's what I want to do. I just want to proclaim it to in God's house and with God's people and say, you know,
I think that's a good image. I mean, just the way you said
yeah.
that, because there are moments. This is the way, this is my experience. I don't know about anybody
Uh-huh.
else's, but I get so lost in just stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
things that are not right, things that I'm struggling with, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually,
Yeah.
and it almost feels it makes things feel fuzzy and cloudy and heavy. And
Yes.
what you said was you get a moment of clarity, and it's like all that for at least a moment is dispelled, and you get a clear image of what life actually looks like and who God is. And maybe it's not going to last every moment of every day from now on, but in that moment, you've got it. And I think that's exactly what I'm
Yeah.
was trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, your mercies never failed me. All my
Yeah.
days I've been held in your hand.
Right.
It is really true. The darkest days of my life, His mercy was the greatest
Yeah.
and I can see it with clarity now. In the moment, I couldn't. And now I try to
Right.
remember when I get in those dark places. And I think that anyone that experiences grief or multiple traumatic experiences in a lifetime, you can get those moments where
Yeah.
that overwhelms and you forget who God is in your
Yeah.
life, and then you worship or you read a verse or whatever, and you're just like, yes, you are there. You hear a song in the sanctuary and it brings tears to your eyes because you really know that
Right.
His mercy hasn't failed and that He
Right.
is there. And like one of my favorite right now, is "Thank You, Jesus, for the Blood" by Charity
That's a
Gale.
really good song.
You know, I was a wretch, and I remember who I was. I was lost. I was blind. I was running out of time. But He made a way to cross the great divide, left heaven's throne to build it here inside. And there at the cross, He paid a debt I owed, broke my chains, freed my soul. For the first time, I had hope. And I know the feeling of hopelessness. And when I feel freedom from hopelessness, freedom from despair, freedom from, dark times,
Right.
it just brings tears to my eyes when I can feel that freedom
Yeah.
and
Sure.
feel that light and that clarity. And I don't know if anybody else experiences that or if I'm just crazy me, but it it's really worship and praise and just songs and the Psalms. It's just such a huge part of who we are
Yeah.
in the kingdom of God, and it expresses so much. And I just hope that people are enjoying the praise and worship, whether it's first service, second service, or
Sure.
contemporary or whatever. Get those old time hymns out and
That's what that
enjoy
works
them.
too.
Yeah,
That's right.
I was at a funeral about a month ago, and a Catholic funeral, and the family insisted that they play the Old Rugged Cross, and it was just a beautiful rendition, and I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, it's beautiful. So, yeah, music and praise and worship have such a huge part in our lives. I think that's all part of the Thanksgiving.
It is. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
So, what is next on our agenda here?
Well, we're headed toward the end of the retelling of the story of God's love. We're going to talk about, I mean, I call this last things, but it's not just, we're not going to do 5 weeks on Revelation, right? It's really more than that. It's how do the letters in the end of the New Testament talk about our present reality and our future reality? So that's where we'll begin. And this week we'll be in Romans chapter 3, which is a great passage about what it means to find new life in Christ. And then everything will finish up on Christmas Eve, and then we'll do something different next year. But we have just a few more weeks left for this.
All right. So, Romans 3 for Sunday.
Yes.
Are there any upcoming events you want to talk about?
Well, certainly we have our family experience, and that'll be on Friday the 5th, I believe. Yeah. And we have a special service this year that you and I are working on with some others called Blue Christmas, because life isn't always easy. And sometimes you're in the middle of Christmas season and everyone else seems happy clappy and it's all good. And, you got all the pictures of the families by the fireside and you don't feel that way.
Matching
and it can feel like
pajamas.
something, yeah, right. It can feel like something is wrong with you. And really it's just life, So an opportunity to share that experience and recognize that it's not always easy, and sometimes the holidays can be a difficult time of the year. So I think that'll be a little different take, and then we'll move from that to Christmas Eve, which is a very different service in which we will celebrate the birth of Christ. So, and I think we can have both. We can have a service in which we deal with the struggle of life not being the way we may want it, or dealing with grief, and also celebrate the birth of Christ. So all those together, I think, will fill out a healthy approach to what Christmas looks like this year.
I think that's good. I really, I'm excited about the Blue Christmas. I think, people have lost jobs, people have, marriages break up, parents die, siblings die, sickness, new diagnosis. And I think it's good to offer a safe place for people to say, this is going to be a rough Christmas.
Yeah.
And I need some place
and
where I
maybe
can...
one more in a series of rough Christmases.
And I need to be someplace where I can be real with that and then allow God to heal that in me, or allow God to be present with me in my hurt, in my fear,
it may just
in
be
my
God
grief.
walking with us. In that. Yeah.
And we need that. I think we need a safe place to be real.
Yep.
But I think it helps us
I agree.
find the joy in the other parts when we're able to look at the sadder parts.
Yeah.
It makes the better parts that much more enjoyable.
Oh, we'll have a little bit of all that.
It's going to be good. I wasn't looking forward to the holidays, but I think I kind of am now.
No, good.
We'll make it good. It'll be good. All right. Well, I think that's it for us today. If you guys have any questions or comments, you want to give us a message, you can text us at 404-565-4498. You can email us at questions@taylorchristian.com, or you can fill out the area provided for you on your Connect card in the bulletin on Sunday and hand it in the offering tray. And I think that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Nope, that's it. All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And we will talk to you in December.
That's right.
Right? Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Bye.